Is it? Oh, it is on. All right.
Did you see what I would?
Scroll down. Oh, I just learned that you gotta scroll down to get it.
It's just a little
You know
thing.
what it was? It logged me in immediately when you turned on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm too late. And I'm like, what do you?
Where's Celeste?
She's back there. You ready? You want me to get her?
Yeah.
Oh.
Two, three, four, five, six. Ready?
Yeah, give them a couple of seconds because Avis and Sarah cannot seem to get it to the. They can only get it to the public thing.
Uh-huh.
So Francis is showing them like a couple of executive things, like the bus. So
Uh-huh.
give them like 1 minute.
Did they go to authenticate? You have to check authenticate.
Yeah, there's a little pop-up. It says
There's a
authenticate.
pop-up.
Maybe they have a pop-up blocker.
I'm
sorry.
kind of blind.
Oh, that's fine.
What was the decision on the microphones, Jim? From
You
Val?
could do either. You can leave it on, but you have to make sure you keep it on when you're talking.
I'm on.
You guys all set?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:39. And first up is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there's been several agenda changes, but they're all reflected. And next up is privilege of the floor. The board encourages public participation at board meetings during a specific portion of the agenda entitled Privilege of the Floor Public Comment. The public comment section is not the time or place to register complaints about individuals or items that have not first been addressed through proper channels with those closest to the issue, such as a teacher, the building principal, the superintendent, or other appropriate party. Individuals making statements during privilege of the floor are expected to be courteous and respectful, modeling for our students how one can participate and have their voice heard in situations where there is agreement or disagreement with others' views. If members of the public have gone through proper channels and still wish to discuss a matter with the board, they can submit their comments in writing to the board clerk. At its discretion, the board may invite visitors to its meetings to participate in the board's discussion of matters on the agenda. The public comments section is an opportunity for residents and residents only to address the Board of Education. Public comment should take place only in the portion of the agenda designated. This is usually at the beginning of each meeting. Persons wishing to address the board must indicate their desire to speak in advance on the sign-in sheet. Because the board typically has many business items on its agenda, speakers must confine their comments to 3 minutes. The board will not address specific questions, comments, but may ask for your name and contact information in the event that follow-up is necessary. The board will not permit in public session discussion involving individual personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual personnel or students should present their comments and/or concerns to the superintendent, who will share them with the board at the next executive session. Okay, so I have the sign-in sheet, and the first person who indicated they wished to speak is Christina Lukides. Christina, if you'd please come down to the mic. And please adjust it, however you're comfortable.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
My name is Christina Lukides. My kids graduated here in 2015 and 2019, and I taught in public schools for 40 years. I would like to comment on the survey results from the August 16th meeting. Students indicated that teachers make behavior expectations known in classrooms, that students' attendance is noticed, and that academic standards are expected. Parents felt well informed by teachers and that the building and grounds are well maintained. These observations speak positively for the school environment and show that there is a culture of teaching and learning in the school. Additionally, students responded that they recognize the need to address the importance of understanding their own feelings and the feelings of others, as well as solving problems not through anger, but through communication. How to communicate when angry. What a mature group of students who understand the need to develop the ability to talk through anger and empathize with others. More so than ever before, children are exposed to angry messaging in the form of dangerous language by TV and social media personalities, threats made to careers and personal safety, foul language on flags seen by kids in school buses and family cars, shouting and false accusations. We even have law enforcement to these meetings to manage outbursts. But these students are asking for guidance to improve communication in their surroundings, which for them is this school. That is a hopeful sign that the school is turning out students who are evaluating how they interact with others and what they are interacting about. Parents, too, indicated that they want guidance to address their students' social emotional needs, as well as bullying and bullying through social media. The tendency to anger, to have social emotional needs, and to bully are examples of the many variables, both productive and challenging, that kids bring with them to school. Teachers and staff know that those challenging issues must be managed and that productive issues encouraged in order for the above-mentioned teaching and learning to take place. The survey results indicated what students and parents want addressed so that the learning environment can thrive. In the above responses from students and parents, to me, it seems that both groups see the school as a place of consistency and responsiveness, a model for communication skills, and a clean, safe, and trusted environment. Well done, school. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person who indicated they wish to speak is Cliff Bradshaw. Please come down.
Thank you. My name is Cliff Bradshaw. This is what I would like to see from you during this new school year. I'd like to see a safe learning environment for my son, physically, spiritually, and mentally. I'd like to see honesty and transparency from each of you. Just give me all the information and let me decide, if it's safe for my kids, if it's good for my kids. I'd like opt-out options. What are they? Just lay them out for me. Give me a list. I like lists. Give me a list. If there's anything I can opt my kid out of, not saying I'm going to take that approach, but I'd like to know what the options are. Listen to me. Although my values may be different than yours, my concerns should not be negated. So hear me out with an open mind, and I will treat you the same way. And teamwork. I look forward to working with each of you to help make Duanesburg a safer place for our children. Changing subjects. As you may know, Brian McGarry passed away a few weeks ago. He had 24 years here as a teacher. He touched so many lives during his tenure teaching here. He is loved and will be sorely missed by so many former Duanesburg students. He is one of the greats who went far beyond the teaching requirement. In doing so, he gained the respect and admiration of so many, including my boys, 3 of them, who he taught, who learned from him within these school walls. Out of the blue, about 5 months ago, Mr. McGarry reached out to my wife and I and shared a school picture he took of my son eating a bagel framed in a bagel. It was really cute. Just out of blue, like a Facebook message. We don't, I'm not close to him, but he knew my kids well, and it was nice to speak with him, and it was very, now it's, nice that he shared that picture. I feel special. There's 1,000 words in that picture, but here are a few that stood out. Brian McGarry was an awesome teacher who loved making learning fun and who loved his students. My question for you here, everyone around this table, how can Duanesburg Central Schools honor and remember Brian McGarry? Plaque, donations, maybe a parent square posting. If someone can get back to me, just let me know. If it's something we need to organize, outside of this group, just let me know. Okay, thank you.
The next person who indicated they wish to speak is Ray McTiernan. Please come down.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments regarding this school district. I'm a teacher of 23 years. I did a brief stint in this district. I just have to comment on what a marvelous district this is. My wife and I almost bought a house in Altamont. much bigger. We decided to add on and stay. My contemporaries and people that I know as teachers in this district, they do so much on the resources that are given. They're incredibly professional. My wife and I are very pleased with our children's education here. We're also very pleased with the communication between teachers and principals. And I just have to say that what we have here is a gem. We almost bought a house in Altamont, and I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad we stayed in this district. And as a professional, I can really subjectively critique my peers, and they're all above board. I just wanted to make that comment.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak that didn't sign up? Okay, well, moving on, we have a number of reports, updates.
So thank you. I'm really excited to talk about this. We're going to talk about our Centennial Building Project, which is what we're calling our next capital building project. We've been working on kind of clarifying a scope, and we had a lot of stakeholder input going into this, but I think we're at a place now where we can bring something to the voters of the community. But I wanted to say a couple words, then I'm going to turn it over to a team of people that we have to present to you as well. So we have folks from our architecture firm, Ashley McGraw. We have some folks from Schoolhouse, which they're our construction managers. And we have John Bick from Fiscal Advisors, which helps us plan out some of these large projects. So we really are celebrating 100 years of district. I'll clarify how we're celebrating that 100 years. So Delancey High School actually opened in 1925. All the summer and into the fall, I've been going through archival boxes from the school to learn more about the history of the school district. And I can tell you that in 1925, when Delancey High School opened, there was a newspaper article that appeared in the Gazette that called it a modern marvel. It costs $60,000 to build, which is a bargain. And we're still using the building now. It's a beautiful building, and it's very well maintained. But that's a building that was built when 3 school districts consolidated. When the remaining 17-odd districts joined those 3 districts in, I think, 1951 and consolidated all of the school districts in the area, that's when we were able to build Dwaynesburg Elementary School. So the elementary school opened in 1954. So really with this project, we're able to think about what our next 100 years is going to look like. So certainly these facilities are still great, but a lot of things have changed since 1925 in the way that we teach kids. However, in looking through a lot of the historical artifacts, you'll find that one thing that has not changed is the overall approach to education and the love for kids, which was always at the forefront. Celeste and I were just looking at a document from the early 30s today. It was from National School Awareness Week or something like that from 1932. And it talked about some of the very same things that we talk about every single meeting. The ideals that we have are very similar. So what will our next 100 years look like? We need to start reimagining the facilities that we have with the ways that we now use them. So, and we have some recent experience with how we can modernize our facilities to make them more efficient. And you can see that now with how our bus loop is running in our parking lot at the elementary school. It's much more efficient and really has been a problem for quite some time. But how can we make the rest of our facilities more efficient and modern and useful to students for the next 100 years? So we're going to go through a bunch of different pieces of this presentation. We are going to introduce the team bit by bit. We're going to talk about the planning process. We'll talk a little bit about the community's input so far. It's by no means is the community input over yet. Then we'll talk about some of the principles that led us to what we've decided on, and then we'll look at what the scope of the project that we're presenting is. And then our folks from Schoolhouse will talk a little bit more about the budget and schedule and how the project will be phased. As a large project, it'll take place over several years. And so I know that everybody's very excited about that. One thing that I've learned as a superintendent is there's an awful lot of get really excited about something and then wait. And so I'm at the really excited phase right now. We're not yet at the wait phase, but there's a lot of time in the wait phase to do more community input and get more specifics on the designs. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to Catherine Wolf from Ashley McGraw to continue the presentation.
Sorry, I'm much shorter than everyone else, so let's see if I can move it down. Yeah, so this is just some of the teaming partners that Dr. Niedermeyer was talking about that helped really, throughout the entire process, make sure that the scope was properly identified, that it was properly priced out, and that it fits within the financial budget of the district. And so we were looking to have a really participatory process. Starting in February of this year up through today, that included working with the district leadership to really set those goals and that path forward for what we wanted to achieve out of not only planning, but a capital project. The district had led some facility committee meetings as well, so there was a lot of internal conversation within the facilities stakeholders to talk about anything that had come out of some of these planning meetings. We did surveys to the educators. We had a couple of community engagement workshops, and then, like I said, planning meetings throughout the entirety of this process. And really the whole reason why we're doing this is twofold. One is we want to have a good understanding of what your programmatic and facility needs are so that we can continually put you in a position where you can meet your goals. And then we want to intentionally and purposefully utilize all of your resources. So whether it's your existing facility, whether it's your financial resources, whether it's your educators in your program, we want to make sure that we're maximizing their impact in your spaces. So starting with that vision and aspiration that we had identified with your district leadership, we conducted facility walkthroughs to better understand your buildings. We conducted those stakeholder engagement meetings, which led to more of an iterative process of idea generation. What makes sense for this upcoming capital project based on what we're hearing, so that we can really be informed but community driven based on what it is that we're hearing collectively from the group. And then the budget and phasing, and then ultimately that capital project. So in, I believe it was March and May of this past year, we had 2 community workshops. And that first one was really to establish that shared vision with the members of the community who participated. And some of the outcomes that they had identified that they really wanted to see when we do work for the district is to make sure that we're promoting hands-on learning opportunities, to allow for multiple pathways for students, whether they're college-bound or will go into the workforce, to create a balance between both high and low-tech interventions. So one thing that we hear time and time again is, yes, our laptops are great. It's great to have these interactive screens, but I want to get up to a whiteboard. I want to be able to collaborate with my peers easily. So finding that balance that works best for all students. Consider how we are allowing the community, inviting the community to access everything that Waynesburg has to offer. Celebrating students where they are, and then encourage that multidisciplinary applications for all types of learning. So then also out of those conversations what were some of those potential projects that community members want to see? So want to look at modernizing those public spaces. You did a beautiful job in this last project with this auditorium, but what can we do for, say, your cafeterias? Create spaces to socialize and gather. Create flexible and adaptable learning environments. One of the things that was interesting was, if we're thinking about cafeterias and kitchens, what are the nutritional upgrades that we could also be providing for our students? So one thing that was so rewarding about including more people into this conversation, is we're not just talking about the facilities anymore. We're talking about impacts that could be done separate from that. How do we design so that students are autonomous and are empowered? How do we modernize the furniture, mimic a college campus, and optimize those outdoor learning spaces? We ultimately came up with these 4 guiding principles that will lead us through not only the decision-making process to identify this scope, but also while we're going through design. So we want to reflect the needs of students, educators, the greater community, and the programs served. We want to instill a sense of community pride. We want to prioritize relationship building and positive connections, and then ensure that additional safety and security measures are integral to the work that we have completed. With that, sorry, I jumped ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Beck with Fiscal Advisors. We are the district's financial advisor. I specialize in capital project planning and state building aid. The district, there we go. The district asked us to take a look at the project scope and determine the potential tax impact that this project would have on the taxpayer. When we do that, we look at multiple things. We look at the scope, we look at the maximum cost allowances, which are the maximum amount of building aid at each individual school building that the state is willing to pay aid on, and the timing of the project in relation to the district's current debt related to other capital projects. After our analysis, we were able to determine that this project could be undertaken with no additional tax impact to the taxpayers. And that is due to 3 main factors. The first being the district's capital reserve. The use of $6 million of capital reserve allows the borrowing amount of this project to be reduced, therefore paying less debt service on the project. The second is the state building aid, which this project will generate. The district has a state building aid ratio of 79.8%. Meaning every dollar that the district spends on eligible expenses in a capital project, the state will reimburse 79.8 cents of that. And the third is retiring debt. So the district has prior capital projects that are reaching the end of the debt and building aid schedule that are already incorporated into the tax levy. So as that falls off, we're able to layer this new project in with no additional increase in taxes. So that's the short story of it. Are there any questions related to that? No? All right, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Drew Jones. I'm with Ashley McGraw. I'm the project manager for the district and lucky enough to work with all you folks. I'm going to start talking about what's going to be in this project. So, how much is it going to be? We're looking at a $28 million project, and again, no tax impact, fully covered. And we're going to be doing that over 2 phases over the next 5 years. Some of the large items that we're talking about doing are going to be called programmatic scope spaces. Where are we really thinking about rethinking how spaces are used? We're talking about classroom renovations at both buildings, kitchen and cafeteria renovations at both buildings, playground at the elementary school, and an office addition for the bus garage. There's also quite a few items that are building condition survey driven. What does that mean? Architects and engineers came and walked the building with appropriate staff, and we found areas that needed help, whether that be existing systems, existing fire alarms, condition of rooms, applicability of furniture, casework, the whole 9 yards. So in that realm, we've got life safety upgrades to interior doors, fire alarm systems, PA systems, exit lighting and signage. All of the roof of both of the buildings is going to be largely replaced. Domestic water system upgrades, mechanical and electrical upgrades, select exterior doors and windows, and general exterior renovation, mainly for the original 1925 junior senior high school. Let's review some plans and actually see where we're doing some work. So at the elementary school, the major renovation scopes are in the dark purple. So the 3rd grade classroom wing is going to be fully renovated. The kitchen and cafeteria is going to be fully renovated. We're also talking about things that aren't pictured, like the playground. We're also going to be doing significant work to the outside of the building to restore and improve its appearance, a lot of roofing and electrical upgrades. Through the lighter purple color, you see classrooms and corridors highlighted where we're going to be doing classroom refreshes, finish and lighting refreshes to bring some of the joy back to those spaces. At the high school, the middle school and high school, again, in the light purple, you're seeing a lot of classroom and corridor space getting a touch on finishes. That's also a lot of mechanical work for proper ventilation for all those rooms. Our main renovation scopes here are the kitchen and cafeteria, and the areas that you see on the first floor labeled, well, it's CLRM, but that's classroom, on the first floor and on the second floor, where we're rethinking what those classrooms mean, what their function is, how they function in with the whole, and how do we make those part of 21st century learning and the future vision of the district. At the bus garage, there's a small office addition. We're replacing the roof because it is, well, it needs it desperately. The metal skin replacement is also needed, and there's select mechanical, electrical, and plumbing upgrades that are going to happen there as well. So now I'll turn it over to Schoolhouse and can talk a little bit more about the phasing and the cost for the phases. Jared.
Thank you all. I'm Jared Yando with Schoolhouse Construction. We have Eric Robert here with us as well. So how did we get to this 28 million? So we started off, I'll admit I was the bad guy in every meeting when I had to bring the prices to the table. But we started off with knowing with the way, fiscally how we had to break this out, that phase one would need to be around $6 million. So that's our first phase. That's targeted to be our first summer project of 24. And then we're going to split the second phase into a multi-year project, which is the larger grunt of the scope of 22 million. So it's technically showing as 2 phases, but it is 3 summers total. So we started with what's called a pre-referendum estimate. That's through our conceptual design of what we feel is going to happen in the spaces. We take these ideas from the district of the areas they like to see done, and then we go to the table and we start estimating numbers. So how can we do it without a design? How can we estimate with just concept? And the way we do that is, this is our bread and butter. Schoolhouse Construction serves for 99% of our clients are New York State K through 12. So projects, we have past data. We work with an estimating service that this is all they do is school projects. So we know typical classrooms, things like that, and that allowed us to come up with these numbers. It can be difficult in these times, as you are probably all aware. If you've done anything at your house in the last year and a half, prices are a little crazy and they fluctuate a lot. So we are watching the market very closely, and we are planning for escalation in these projects. We are using escalation factors that are following the current escalations we're seeing. We were conservative in that sense. We don't know if it's going to come down. We hope, and we all cross our fingers it will, but we are projecting out for higher escalations in these school projects that are coming up, specifically 24, 25, and into 26. So we were looking into that when coming up with these numbers. Now, if this project passes, which we all hope, we will then go into further estimates when we move along the way. So we'll have design development drawings, which are one step further, which we can really get into the nitty-gritty. We'll be digging in to the school, looking above ceilings, double checking everything, and really getting into the details of the estimate when we get to there. And then we'll get into the SED submission, which is where it goes to SED, and we'll go from there. So that's really how we got here. And we can kind of show you a little bit of the plan and the schedule going into. So phase one, just to go over a little bit of scope, we had a general idea of the full scope. So the smaller phase one, that first summer, we're going to tackle the elementary playground. That would be the first summer playground gets revamped, and also the elementary school roofs. And a portion of this complex's roofs. All the roofs on all the old parts of the buildings, the newer parts of the buildings, all are past their or at their warranty period. So it is time for these roofs to be replaced, and it is a large chunk of the budget. So phase one would be playgrounds, roofing at the elementary, and then a chunk of the roofing here at this building. That is that portion. And then we would move into phase two, which phase two would then be everything else that we spoke about, that Drew spoke about earlier. So that would be the classroom renovations, that would be the additional roofing, the exterior at the elementary school, the classroom at the elementary school, and the cafeterias, et cetera. So that's kind of how it's broken down. So the major milestones for our steps moving forward with this process is we are here today, 9:13 for the meeting. The district has decided on 10/6 at 6 p.m. at the high school main entrance to do a walkthrough. So this is where you can walk through the facility, see the facility, and check out some of the spaces that we're looking to revamp. Then the resolution and the language would then go to the board on the 11th of October. That would be to officially bring this forward as a project, and we would get more feedback from the public as scheduled for the 15th of November. So there would be another public session to get feedback on what we've heard from the project, your walkthroughs if you participated in that, and that's where comments can be taken. And then the referendum vote is scheduled for December 8th. So that is where the public and the taxpayers vote on whether or not to pass this no tax impact project for Dwaynesburg Central Schools. And then you get into the process. This is the portion where Dr. Niedermeyer mentioned the wait, the excitement to the wait. This is where it's excitement for us on our end, on Ashland McGraw and Schoolhouse's end. We're busy. Designs are going full force. Estimates are going, planning, logistics plans, et cetera. And then they go to SED. That's the wait time for us, where we wait patiently for SED to pass and bring forward and approve the drawings. And then we move into the actual construction. So you can see a targeted time frame on phase one for pre-construction of December of this year after the referendum vote passes through September of 23 and with a start of summer of 24. After that September of 23, we go through the bidding process, et cetera, procurement. And that's another thing we're dealing with in our industry right now is the long lead of procurement. And we're gonna track that as we go and make sure we're doing things that we know we can get products for during the timeframes of construction. And then the process somewhat starts overlapping. So Ashley McGraw, as things are coming back from phase one, is going to be starting to design and get things ready to go to SED for phase two while that project is going on in phase one. So while we're doing elementary playground, roofs, we're going to be in the process of getting the phase two ready, which is the bigger chunk of the project, which goes through the same process with SED, estimating, et cetera, then to the bid process to where we would be starting in spring of 2025 throughout the buildings. And that hasn't been set in stone exactly where we're gonna move just yet. There's a lot of factors that take place in figuring that out with the district when it comes to that time of logistically knowing which spaces can be taken over at what times and which spaces do you need turned back over at certain points. So those will be ironed out as we move forward in this process. But that's the plan for moving forward is up there. It's exciting. It's been a pleasure working with the district thus far and coming up with this and with Ashley McGraw, and we're excited and we hope the community can embrace this project. It should be great for the district and great for students and future students. Thank you.
So that is going to complete our presentation, but I wanted to say, I know we're all saying that it's the wait time, but so much happens during that wait time where we're working with the district and stakeholders to clarify exactly what we mean by classroom renovation, by renovating these cafeterias, figuring out what's important, making sure that we're aligning the work with district goals so that we're not working in a black box. So with that, any questions? And Dr. Niedermeyer, I'd like to turn it over to
Yeah,
you.
I mean, I'll just say that it's been really nice to do a smaller project at the elementary school this summer with all of the people that will be working on this project. So getting to know the architects and the construction management team and has been really valuable. And I think that we have a good team, and I think everybody has the district's best interest in mind. So I do want people to know, so I will be leading a tour on the 6th, and the Buildings and Grounds Committee is going to be hosting that, but we'll take everybody who wants to come walk around this building and the elementary school scope with me. We'll even get to see the inside of the transportation office, which is super exciting. And so we'll be doing that on the 6th, and then next time we meet as a board, you'll be voting on whether or not to approve the language for the referendum. So that's the next step for us. And then keep in mind that the public is still going to have a chance to chime in on this at the November meeting, which will start a little bit early because we'll do a public hearing. And also the public is definitely, we're going to need them to help with the design phase as well once, and hopefully if this project passes. So does the board have any questions now that we can start thinking about? Okay.
So he was talking about the capital reserve and some other borrowed funds that would be used to fund this. So
Yep.
that capital reserve, is it the same as the school reserve, or is it separate?
So actually, Jeff will be presenting on all the reserves, including the capital reserve, in just a little bit tonight. But that's one of our reserves, the capital reserve. Yep.
So, I'm not sure, I think was probably, I forgot your name, sir, I'm sorry. I'm sorry?
I'm Drew.
Drew. So, when you said that you came up with the budget and the cost analysis for the project, you factored in the way that the economy's been going.
Of course.
It just seems so uncertain. So how did you come up with that algorithm in order to project that to not have a tax impact with inflation and supply chain disruptions and?
Well, I can handle the tax impact part if you can handle the other part. So the tax impact part is simple. Based on the information that we had from fiscal advisors, we know the total cap over the 5 years that we're kind of projecting here, 28 million is the cap. That's as much as we can spend and not have an impact. So the task then is for Schoolhouse to help us cost it so it fits. Now, you're talking about an uncertain environment that we all see.
Sure.
So I'm going to let Jared be the bad guy and tell you how we made it fit, because there is a lot of contingency, there's a lot of safety factors built into this, but I'll let Jared handle that.
Thank you.
So there is one factor that we know has a gradual movement, and that's labor cost. So prevailing wages, which are established by the state of New York, have a gradual increase and a gradual cost. So we know that curve. So our labor rates, we can track that very easily. So where your question is coming into is material. How do we handle this material influx? So with bids that are coming in right now on our projects and through our estimator who actually estimates for multiple projects, not just ours, we're seeing the trends and following those trends of that material and seeing where the material is going. And we're looking at the percentages over the last year and a half and 2 years and following that incline, and we're actually kind of using that incline. We're not seeing if it's going to level out. We're kind of following that same gradual line going up. So that's why I said we were conservative in many senses in this estimate, because we weren't going to say, okay, we think it's going to level. We're not going to let it jump that far ahead in 25 and 26. So we followed that all the way up through 26 when these projects would bid for the material cost. But so you take that material cost, what we know the cost is right now today, and we know that labor rate, and we put that in to get a base number. So that gives us our base number for the work. And this is where we get the factors that fall into place. So we have a design contingency, which is around 10%. So that design contingency is a contingency for Ashland McGraw when they're doing the design. If there's something that comes up when we open up that wall or look above that ceiling and we know we have to add work, we add 10% in case there's something that comes up during the design. There's also an escalation factor that we carried for the 2024 on that moving up, we carried 11% in 24 of a rise in material. And we carried it at 13% for the 25 bid. And then on top of that, we have an incidental budget. So that's your budget that covers everything. That's our fees, that's Ashley McGraw's fees, that's your fiscal fees, that's your lawyer fees, that's all the fees for permits, that's all the fees for everything. So that is a factor that's set by SED. So SED sets a factor of where we should fall for incidentals. That's 22.5%. And then we also throw in there a construction contingency. So we hold a contingency number of around 8 to 10% of the total number for contingency money that's on the side during the project for those unforeseen conditions, which do occur if any of you have been a part of any capital projects. You open up a wall, there wasn't supposed to be, I'll use the word, nobody likes it, asbestos there, and then you have to get rid of that asbestos, and that costs a lot of money. So that contingency, that's what that is there for. So we factor that into the costs as well. So if you take that 10%, that 11%, that 22.5%, and then at 8 to 10%, you can see how that number raises up, and I become the bad guy at the meeting, because you look at that base number of that work and you see that dollar amount and you say, oh my goodness, we're going to renovate everything for this 28 million. But when you start factoring in all these percentages and these numbers that we have to account for, that means we have to choke down the amount of scope we do because of these percentage factors that we have in there. So that's the numbers and how we got to those numbers that you may have seen on certain items. That's what we call a fully loaded number. So the fully loaded number, that's the dollar amount with all of those factors in place. So it does look extremely high when you see some of these numbers, you know, like $3 million for the elementary roof. How is that possible? But that's everything. That's incidentals, escalations, contingencies, etc. So I hope that helps.
No, that does. Thank you so much. That was a very thorough
Yeah.
explanation. If worst case scenario, let's say materials just doubled by 2025, do we then consider some of the scope of the work that gets cut? Like, how do we address it at that point, should that happen?
So with that process of the schedule we were showing you, when we go through the process of design, Ashley McGraw is going to come up with these design developments. So then we're going to start estimating with numbers we know right then and there during that process. So that's going to be in 23, 24 when we're doing that, probably more towards 24, so we're closer. So we're going to then know and have a taste for what's going on. You know, fingers crossed, we're adding, right? You know, and hopefully the escalation goes down. But so we'll know at that design development stage where the numbers are tracking. Is our scope, are we creeping to a level where we're going to have to cut scope? We'll know at that point. And then when we get to SED submission, the same thing. A factor that we usually, you know, if we're close and we know we're getting close, one factor that comes into play is what we call alternates. So we may pursue something where, you know, there's something that, and usually the board will get involved in this in kind of prioritizing. So if we get to a point where we're close, we're going to put something in a priority 2. Something we thought we were going to do, maybe we bump it to priority 2, but we bid it as an alternate, which means we'll get a number for that. So we'll get a base bid, and if that base bid comes in low, you can then pluck in and bring in the alternates if they fit into that overall end budget number of the 22 million for phase 2. So there are contingencies and way we can work with Ashley McGraw in the design to make it land so we will have successful bids. Hopefully we won't have to sacrifice. That's our hope with what we did here. And we've been very successful in this past year, actually, with how volatile it is. All of our bids have been coming in very successful from our team because we're factoring and being as conservative as we are. And it's working out, and we're hoping that the trend continues in the sense of it's being successful for us. We hope that the escalation trend doesn't, but we'll have to see what happens.
Okay, so in the reverse side, if things should somehow go down in price, we could maybe beef up the project and do a few more things?
Correct, because as a voter, as a voting group, if the community votes this project through for $28 million, you have $28 million to spend on a capital project. You voted that scope through. You now have $28 million where you can pull new scope in if that is the case and it's trending that way.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Anyone else on the board have questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next report is school principal updates.
I'm just getting my notes. Are we in a new presentation? No sandwiches. Hello, we are here to talk about our building level team plans. We've put a lot of work into them at both buildings. And so just a little bit about our process before we launch into what our goals are and how we arrived on our plan. So over the summer, we gathered our building leadership team, kind of an advisory board at each building. And in the meantime, we have department coordinators that work with the teachers in teams. And those departments looked at some of our district data, they looked at some of our student needs, and they drafted goals that would be representative of what those departments of teachers would need to be working on for the current year. And then our coordinators brought those goals to the forum of our building leadership team, and the team was able to review them. The coordinators presented the thinking behind the teacher teams. Our entire building leadership team asked a lot of clarifying questions, suggested some edits, and then ultimately approved a plan that we would use as a guiding document for the current school year. Our building leadership teams consisted of our administrators that worked at the different levels, our teacher leaders, a number of teacher leaders that are our curriculum coordinators, but also representatives from our PBIS teams, and also our teacher mentor coordinators participated as well. We also had parent representatives on the team, and then at the high school level, we had a student representative as well. So we will launch into our elementary team, and review some of the goals that our elementary building leadership team arrived on. So sorry, I didn't know it was going to roll out in phases like this. Sorry. So at the elementary level, our language arts department has leadership as a humanities department, and so they had decided that some of the grade levels had inconsistent resources, so some needed different kinds of teaching materials, and the level of rigor of the instructional materials really varied, and it didn't always fit the needs of the students. And so as a goal, our ELA department is doing a pilot, a three-pronged pilot of resource materials. They're focusing in first, third, and fifth grade, and they have researched materials and selected things that are supposed to be closely aligned to their learning goals, and so they're monitoring those the lessons and the learning over the course of the pilot, and then they'll be able to decide if that's something that we would want to expand usage at the elementary school.
Past historical data has suggested that our students with disabilities struggle with vocabulary and their meaning. So that department has done a lot of research and wanted to come up with a plan to provide background knowledge, develop their vocabulary so they can better participate in a lot of the curriculum. They have laid out a year-long plan of how they're going to pre-assess, assess, instruct the children so they can, again, better interact with the curriculum.
Over the last several years, we've identified a trend in the performance of a particular subgroup of our students, students who come from lower socioeconomic status. And we've noticed that they have performed lower than some of their peers on some of our standardized assessments, like our New York State exams and things like that. Several years ago, we began developing a special subcommittee of the RTI team. That's a response to intervention team at the elementary level. And that team strove to focus on educating themselves about the needs of this particular subgroup of students and beginning to identify different resources and different ways to meet their learning needs. And so that has been a continuous development. And so our goal for the coming year is just to really continue that work and keep building that subcommittee of the response to intervention team at the elementary level.
The last one was developed with myself and the team, and due to the past few years, we've had a lot of limitations of what we could interact with, what we could do, what we could bring the community in on. So my goal was to start developing more opportunities to bring families and parents into the building to participate with the curriculum, to see what we're doing, be a part of it, and making a more stronger collaboration. So I'm going to be working with grade levels on different events we can have in. I've created an event myself that I'll be reaching out to families to come in, but we really want to just have that collaboration piece again that's been so desperately missing these past few years and get connections again with everyone.
All right, and now Mrs. Marvin and I will talk a little bit about our high school building level plan and the different goals that we had identified. So we have quite a few, oh, sorry. Those were some of the items. Okay. We have quite a few more departments because of the type of curriculum that we're rolling out at the junior, senior high school level.
So the first department we're going to talk about is our special education department. So we have a group of high school and junior high school teachers that work together. And one of the things that they wanted to look at was reducing the legacy services and aids to increase some student independence. So when kids get ready to go to college or get a job, you know, they're more independent. They're able to do things more on their own. So in order to accomplish this goal, one of the things that they're going to look at is they're going to monitor and make recommendations throughout the school year to eliminate some of these services at the annual reviews. They're going to look at their data that they're going to collect throughout the year in order to do that.
Our ELA department really has been celebrating strong results and strong performance across the board. So our New York State exams and our English Regents exams, our students perform really well. So our ELA department doesn't have a new goal, but more of a stay the course goal, and then pushing our students towards increased mastery. So reaching those high levels of mastery on the English Regents.
And then one of the tasks that we as a department, or as a building, took on was a writing goal across our buildings. And so our Spanish department really wanted to improve the grammar in their student writing. So some of the tasks that they're going to do in order to do that is they're going to continue doing some professional development. They're going to find some new instructional techniques in order to provide students with some direct instruction for grammar rules. They're also going to be looking at their benchmarks that they've come up with in order to specifically identify grammatical needs that their students need. And they're also going to start looking at teaching a little bit more in depth, some sentence structures, and assess whether students can utilize those structure sentences in their own writings. So again, it really does tie into that writing goal that they're looking at.
And in math, our math department actually identified 2 different goals, but the first is based on a study of our students' performance on assessment tasks. The math department identified a difficulty with constructed response questions. These are the kinds of questions where students have to write or out their solution to a math problem. They can't just select like a multiple choice question. And so they saw that our students were not doing well on these kinds of questions. And so they have taken a two-pronged approach to that. They are doing more curricular integration of these kinds of tasks throughout their lessons and their assessments, so the students are seeing them a lot. And then they're also tracking the assessment data that they're getting from these tasks, so they can look, are the students gradually increasing their success on these kinds of questions, and then being able to extrapolate from that whether their instruction is effective at increasing students' performance on those. Now, our math department also recognized that we do have a lower number of students who are taking advanced math courses. And as a district, we really want our students to be college ready. And looking backwards, we know that they need to be taking high-level math courses in high school in order to be ready to take college math courses. And so as we continue to look back through our math program that begins at the 6th grade level and then through 12th, we looked at some things that we can do to increase the number of students who are taking advanced math classes. And some of those things included looking at our scheduling practices, revamping our the way that we select students for advanced courses. We're using an assessment-based selection versus relying solely on just a teacher recommendation. That's giving us a little bit of a broader net to encourage students into more accelerated classes, especially at our middle school level. And then we're also working within the classrooms to just build student confidence and encouraging them to take those more advanced classes where they may not have been sure if they could do it. We've been encouraging them to do it.
And now you're probably seeing a little bit of a theme. So again, the writing goal. So our science department took a look at our constructive responses and the types of questions. And so their goal was to increase how our students are doing that when they looked at their regions data. So that's where they came up with their goal. Some of the things that they did this summer, they came in and they did a lot of curriculum work in order to kind of look at how they were working with the students with their writing. They also are going to provide different strategies to students, or working with a coach to provide different strategies to help students break down their questions. They're going to be working with the students to do some peer evaluation and analysis. And a number of our teachers last year did some project-based learning with English and science in 8th grade. So their hope is to continue to do that this coming year, and then also work with the high school teachers with English and science to kind of incorporate more of that writing with them. Like I said, they did work throughout the summer. And one of the things that we did was we did some movement with some teachers, and we did hire an additional science teacher so that we were able to provide an additional lab period for every single one of our 7th and 8th grade students and 6th grade students to kind of continue to build on this, because it does really start in the younger grades.
And our social studies department also did some analysis of our assessment results and identified that a particular writing task was
causing difficulty for our students. In social studies, the students are tasked with writing about enduring issues, and these are factors that influence history over time, things like conflict or population growth or scarcity of resources. And so the students are asked to look at primary sources and then write about these different themes and their impact in history. And they recognize that our students were having difficulty with these kinds of tasks. So what they did is they looked at, again, our 6th through 12th grade social studies programming, and they created a scope and sequence where they were really purposefully introducing these enduring issues and the writing tasks surrounding them across all of those grade levels. And then they're also working on embedding more instruction in the analysis of primary resources as well.
And then finally, we actually did look at some of the survey data with our committee, and we came up with our culture goal. And our culture goal for the high school was to improve interactions with peers and to work with social emotional wellness. So that seemed to be, kind of the theme that we were hearing from a number of students is now that we're back in the building, how do we work with each other? How do we interact with each other? So that was our goal. Some of the things that we're going to put in place this year is the counseling department's going to send out private surveys on a quarterly basis in order to reach out to students so that they know if they need that additional support that they're there. The questions are going to ask the students will specifically address the student's sense of belonging because we really want our kids to feel like they belong in our building. We did spend some time this summer working with our middle school teachers, and we came up with a mentoring program where we're going to meet, our teachers are going to meet with students, and they're going to work on things like stress management, communication, organization. They're going to do that in small groups, at least once a week, if not more than once a week. So it'll be like a one-on-one or like 5-on-1 thing with our teachers. We also are working right now to develop a mentoring program in the high school, a 9-12 mentoring program. And that really is to support some of our newer students who have come into the building or those that are feeling socially isolated so that they all do feel like they are part of our culture and that they're part of Duanesburg. So that concludes the elementary and the middle senior high school building plan. It was a lot of work. We had some really great people that helped us put this together. So thank you.
Anyone have any questions from the board?
I have one question.
I'm sorry.
Super excited about the mentoring program, Mrs. Benjamin and Mrs. Marvin. Is every student going to be able to participate in that?
So they are. We're in the so we're working with some of our students and also with the counseling department. And you'll see that we do have a new counselor who's on the agenda for tonight. So we're hoping that she's also going to help us develop that. But we will open it to any student who would like to participate.
Thank you.
How many students do we have in the low socioeconomic status? Do you know?
Sorry, let me just look at my notes here. I'm sorry, what? Jeff, how many students? Yeah.
That's a percentage, so, but I don't know how many total students we have, right? How much? We have 700 this year.
I
140.
140, that's what I thought you had said. Yeah, maybe a little lower.
The culture, I think, obviously is a very, very important part to touch on. And I know the culture is usually the expectations and the idea of what it's going to be is set by the top. And, you have to consider everyone in the bottom and the middle, but the middle is always what really sustains the culture. So is there any more ideas that we can present to give more of a buy-in for the students to want to have the culture be something that's inclusive and accepting to other students, especially the new students and maybe the students that do feel left out?
Right, so that's a great point, and that's one of the things that we did look at. And I do think that what we're hoping to do with the survey that we're going to be sending out, to kind of get a gauge on what students are looking for and what they're not looking for. We also do have a number of clubs and organizations that we are going to tap into in order to develop this new mentoring program, because they do have leaders and they want to also participate. So my hope will be to not just include the new students, but any student who might feel that social isolation, because there are a number of them that still really haven't adjusted to coming back. So, you know, we're going to do a PBIS day, which our students are designing. It's coming up in October, and they pretty much designed the outlay of what we're going to do for that day. So we are going to send out another survey, just looking for student input as to what they think, what they would like to see occur in our building.
What kind of response do you get from the students on the survey? Like, what percentage of students do fill it out?
So actually, the design that we have for the way that we do our surveys is we do it in a classroom environment. So like we usually will tap into the social studies teachers or the English teachers. So they do it during their, like in like the first 10 minutes of a class or the first 5 minutes of a class. And we typically have a really good response when we do it that way. Or we now have academic periods. So last year we had a number of surveys that we completed. We had the students do it during that academic period because they're sitting there. If we send it out and we ask them to do it on their own, like on a Friday night, it won't happen. They
That's
won't
what I was
answer it.
wondering. Okay.
But we do tie it in, and we will this year again tap into that academic period. That's when we're going to do the mentoring component with the middle school teachers.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any
Right now,
other?
right now we have 109 low SES students.
But I just want to follow up Avis a little bit. What we did is we looked at the scope of students and where could we intervene early enough where it's not impacted at the middle and high school levels. What could we do at the younger levels? So although there's that wide range, we tried to be a little bit more proactive at the younger ages.
One more question. You were talking about math and algebra and how you don't have as many students participating as we would like. I'm just wondering, are those higher level academic classes, are they weighted? Because I know as a student, I was not taking physics because it was really hard and it was going to kill my GPA and I wanted to get into college. So how do we address that, or is it already being addressed?
So we weight our AP classes and we weight our UHS classes. But as far as a Regents level course, we do not weight that because it results in a Regents at the end. So those don't get weighted. Colleges do look upon those as being a higher level course that you took. But as far as the weight, it's the same weight.
So I'm just wondering if maybe that is a hurdle that students are considering, because I know personally as a student, I did.
Yeah.
And it,
Actually,
you know.
so it's actually a misnomer to say that the GPA is the thing that's going to attract college admissions officers. It's really the classes that you take. When we give college admissions offices our transcripts, they strip them right down to nothing, and they're just looking at what kids are taking versus the classes that were available in school. So they want to make sure that students who are going to college are taking the most challenging classes available. And the classes that we're looking at, like the Algebra 2, so it's a higher level, Regents level math class, but it's not yet a college level math class. And so really is kind of like that, and chemistry are the ones that we're really focusing on to make sure more students are just kind of finishing with their Regents curriculum, let alone the pre-algebra or pre-calculus and calculus courses that they could be taking too.
And those are the ones that the colleges actually acknowledge as a college level course. So the Algebra 2, Jim's right, the Algebra 2, they just look at that as another math class that our students would take.
Yep, but if you don't take that class, the chances are pretty good that when you go to college, you're going to find yourself in a remedial math class that you have to pay for, but you don't get college credit for. And so that's one of the things that's important too, is that we know that we have 70% of students going to college. We want to make sure that when they get to college, they don't have to take remedial classes, because that is expensive. And you know, they can take those things in high school.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but are the Regents still only in like New York State as far as, you know, the testing of Regents? So if a student were to go out of state is it looked, for the regions being more of a difficult test, is it really considered if you go to an out-of-state school?
So I would say yes, because even the out-of-state school, it's a great question. I'm an out-of-school counselor, I get asked that all the time. So what I would say is they do, because they know what New York State curriculum is, and they know what the requirements are for the New York State. So if I'm a school in Massachusetts, I know what New York State is requiring. That would be my job to know that. So I would want to see that they took Regents exams and that they passed them, that they did well, because that would show me that they were accomplished in what their educational program was.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure, go.
So I know that, I saw that, well, you stated that you're piloting a program or programs for ELA, right? So will you be piloting any programs for math?
No, we didn't. We invested in a new math program last year called
Okay.
Reveal Math, which is now directly aligned to the new next gen standards, and we've been having some great success with some of our assessments we've seen so far. So we purchased that last year. We had it implemented. This will be our second year of implementation.
Okay, so Common Core is no longer exists?
It's next
or-
gen standards now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of the ELA curriculums we're looking at as well, to be aligned the same way.
All right, anyone else with questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, and thanks for your good work. Next up is Jeff.
Okay, so every year, when we finish the end of the school year, we are able to determine whether we have a little bit of money left over at the end of the school year. And hopefully that's where you're going to end up, because if we're in a red, we had another conversation that we're going to be having. So this is the reserve fund report. I'm going to report on this, but I'd like to just let you know that the actual reserve fund report is on board docs. So next month, I'm going to ask that the board accept the reserve fund report, not to accept my presentation so much. I'm going to present the material, because what I don't want to do is sit here and read that whole report to you. So without any further ado, so basically what the reserve fund is to save for future projects, acquisitions, or other allowable purposes. It is actually a legally, it's a mechanism for legally saving money to finance for infrastructure, equipment, and other requirements. It also provides us financial stability. So we've talked in budget work sessions in the past about the potential for a fiscal cliff, looking at rates that are increasing, really, really highly this year. This is a good way for us to provide that stability to the district. And it provides us opportunities to be able to cut costs on certain things and, make sure that we are able to purchase the things that we need. The fact that the district is in good financial condition allowed us to be able to put in a bus loop and provide that safety measure at the elementary school this past summer. So this is the reason why, why we try and save money when we can and do this through the reserve fund. So just a little bit about the district reserves. They're generated from fund balance off of the general fund. So at the end of the school year, the school district is not allowed to, by the comptroller's office, finish the school year out and carry any more than 4% in fund balance. So anything above that 4% in fund balance should be put into a reserve fund for the purpose of taking care of some of those extra costs that may come about. So I'd like to point out that before I show the amounts is that more than half of the total reserves in our current reserve fund are actually made up of the capital reserve fund. We had created the capital reserve fund for this district a few years back, actually several years back, with a cap of $6 million, with a maximum, it's a maximum of 10 years. And this $6 million is actually a portion of that first phase of the capital project. So this is what's going to allow us to start that project in 2024 instead of 2025, and allows us to go up to that 28 million in that capital project. So this amount of that 6 million is actually considered in all of that. And we haven't fully funded that yet, but the assumption is there at this point that we could hopefully get to that point so that we can do that whole portion of that capital project. So a summary of all the reserve funds that we have in our district. So it's the EBLAR fund, which is the employee benefit, and that one actually fluctuates from year to year, and it's based on a percentage of employee costs. So that's always going to be the reserve fund that fluctuates from year to year. The employee retirement contribution, ERS reserve. So in future years, it's expected that we may see ERS and TRS start to increase, and for next year it is going to increase. So if the district gets to a point in budget process and we realize that we really need to try and find other ways to fund the budget, we may have to dip into reserves to balance that out so that we don't have to go out with an enormous tax levy for the community. And that's why we save, so that we don't have to ask the community for a 5% increase on taxes, because I'm sure that nobody wants to see that. I live in the community, I know I don't want to see that. So the teachers' retirement system is the TRS, and that was just allowed just a few years ago. This allows us to pay for New York State teachers' retirement system as well. Then there's the unemployment insurance reserve, and we have that as well. It's just basically to cover for higher unemployment claims due to layoffs based on economic weaknesses or extreme enrollment drops. So we did get to a point during this unemployment claim where it was actually, I was looking at it thinking, if this starts to get crazy, we might have to discuss that too. And then property loss reserve. So this is to protect us from uncovered loss due to deductibles. So we have a large deductible for the district, which, in the case where we might have some extreme measure, something like a flood, and we've had floods here before, we may have to cover that deductible, and we can use that property loss reserve in order to cover that. It makes it much easier to try and balance that out, especially if you're facing a difficult budget year. And then workers' compensation. So again, this is just to cover the shortage of funding and to cover workers' compensation expenses if we so much as see that start to go up. Our district is actually a part of a whole group of workers and workers' comp. We've done fairly well for several years. However, you don't know what you don't know in the future. So it's good to make sure that even though workers' compensation costs have gone up, we've done okay, but it's there in case we have to have that discussion. Insurance costs, again, this is very similar to the property loss reserve, to claim against any claim, but this is actually to cover a claim against the district that might be determined not 100% covered. And then lastly is the capital reserve, which is the most largest reserve right now at this time. So it's going to allow us to begin a project without creating additional debt, asking the community to borrow, and you don't have to pay for that percentage because it's already been saved up. So here's a look at the actual reserves right now, and you'll see this in the report. The summaries that I just gave you on the other slides, it actually goes more in depth in the actual report on board docs. So the values that are in this report are also assuming the values that are transferred in the board agenda tonight as well. So there was a resolution back in June that allowed us to do that. Every year we do that resolution that says that anything above that 4%, we will put it in reserves for savings. And so the largest amount will be that a little over $1 million that will go into that reserve for capital. And then there's some other reserves that were also balanced out too, but it's the capital reserve that we're going to try and save up for that capital project. So while we did have a good budget year in 21, 22, that's where it puts us now at the 4.9 million for the capital reserve fund. So this is just a brief look also. It's kind of a summary of the last slide here. Just kind of show you percentages and dollar amounts for the current reserve funds. And again, this is also considering the funds that were that came out of in excess of the 4% for the 21-22 school year. So years ago, there were less reserve funds, and there seemed to be more undesignated fund balance. And it was in 2017 when we started saying, well, we really need to, instead of creating undesignated fund balance, which the comptroller's office does not like, to go ahead and create that capital reserve fund, and that allowed us to legally do some savings and save the taxpayers some funds for capital work. So this is just a brief look at over the years as we have saved. A majority of that is in the capital reserve fund and will be taken back out for that capital project for that $6 million. So it's going to bring that down, that number down significantly when we get to that point. So some goals for the Duanesburg Central School District for the reserve funds is to continue to save for that capital project. So you can see that we're not fully funded on that reserve fund. So if we do want to go out with that $6 million portion of that capital project, we would need to either fund that or borrow extra. And we would prefer, obviously, to fund that with already set savings. To prepare, obviously, for funding shortfalls that we've talked about in budget work sessions, due to any of these risks that we've been talking about, and specifically, I'm referring to some of the foundation aid discussions that we've had, and we'll dive into that a little bit more during budget work sessions too. And then to use the reserve funds to reduce the need to do any program cuts, because that revenue source may be from New York State retirement. We could put it into that retirement fund and kind of appropriate that reserve fund into the retirement and still say that we're going to reduce the need to actually increase taxes for folks. And then to continue provide some stability that this district has had for many, many years. This allows us to prepare for some of those risks. And since we are a smaller district, even the smallest of dollar amount in cuts and aid can affect us. So we need to be prepared for that. And that is all I have for you, but if you have any questions from the board.
One quick one, Jeff.
Sure.
There's no way to move funds from one fund to another fund within the fund balances, or is there?
Some of them, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Specifically, I don't know off the top of my head because there's only some that allow that.
Mm-hmm.
By a board resolution, you could definitely transfer funds if
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Avis.
Just to make sure that I personally understand. So there's about $7.4 million left in the reserve right now. So the capital project for the first phase is $6 million. So there will be 1.4 million remaining.
So depending on how much more we're able to put in some of the other reserves at the end of the next couple school years, yeah, there's going to be that $6 million drop from where we're at. So you won't see that anymore. So that's kind of the point where we're saving money to get to a capital project. So at one point, the 2017-18 school year, it actually never made it into a capital reserve fund, but there was reserve funds that were about $3 million that we were able to save taxpayers that money because it was sitting in a undesignated fund balance, it should have been in a reserve fund. Moving forward, we're going to use reserve funds to do that. So, after this capital project gets started, we spend that $6 million. I would absolutely recommend that we continue to try and do things like, create a capital reserve fund so that you can fund the next capital project.
Right.
Because the other 22 million, that 22 million is staged at the year 2025, because that's when the rest of the debt falls off that the district currently has, who's paying for some of the other projects that we've done. So that's why we're able to do that in that specific year, and then the $6 million allows us to actually start sooner because we don't have to borrow. We've already got the money.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have a question, Jeff. I just had a comment. I have a comment that I don't have questions, I think, because of how thoroughly and clearly you put this together for us. So I just wanted to say I appreciate that. I'm a visual learner as well, so having the different charts are really helpful to me.
Charts, right?
So thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I did. Okay, next item, approve minutes of August 16th, 2022 Board of Education meeting. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the meeting minutes from the August 16th, 2022 meeting as submitted. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Francis, thank you. Second? Second. Thank you, Melissa. Questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next up is Board of Education standing committees. Did any of the committees meet during the last period?
Yes, the policy, well, 2/3 of the policy committee met just earlier this evening. We talked about a revision to policy 1510, which updates the procedures to our regular meetings. Essentially, it's making some revisions to fall in line with regulations around attending these meetings virtually and remotely. So Erie, the company that keeps us on top of our policies, made those suggestions. So we accepted those suggestions. We did also take up a conversation about a request to implement a tax exemption for people with qualifying disabilities. We've sort of come to the conclusion at this time that we're not going to pursue this. We are going to work to ensure that qualifying seniors are making sure that they're taking advantage of the existing exemptions that we have. And that's all we had.
Thank you. Anyone else?
The only thing is building and grounds, as the superintendent indicated, we're going to be doing the walk around October 6th, and I'd like to see everybody there.
Okay. Now Teresa's not here. Tony, did audit do anything? No. Jeff, isn't audit like season coming up? Audit season is coming up. Okay. Okay, cool, thank you. All right, moving on to financial items. Yep. Approve State Environmental Quality Review Act seeker for various projects located in the school district. Resolution as listed. Do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll motion.
Thank you, Melissa. Do I have a second? Thank you, Sarah. Questions or comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Accept financial reports. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the appropriation status, extracurricular account, revenue status, and treasurer's reports ending July 31st, 2022. Claims auditors reports, general warrant A6, $158,834.19, and capital warrant HP1, $37,656.50, dated August 17, 2022, and general warrant A9, $748,150.20, and capital warrant HP2, $3,177.81, dated August 29, 2022, as provided by the treasurer and recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion? Tony, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
All right, Avis, thank you. Questions or comments on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on. Approve memorandum of understanding for school resource officer for 2022-2023 school year. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the MOU agreement between the Schenectady County Sheriff's Office and the Duanesburg Central School District dated September 13, 2022, effective September 1st, 2022 to June 30, 2023, as recommended by the superintendent. This agreement shall not be binding on the parties until authorized and signed by each party's respective representatives. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Avis. A second?
I'll second.
Francis, thanks. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next financial item. Approve 2022 school year student lunch price. Recommendation that the Duanesburg Board of Education approve the following K through 12 student breakfast and lunch prices as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Student breakfast, $1.85. Student lunch, $3. Student milk, 50 cents. And I guess the other prices would be as they previously existed. So, do I have a motion? Melissa, thank you. Second? Tony, thanks. Questions or comments on this? Okay,
Go
Avis.
ahead.
Go ahead, Avis.
Okay.
We'll get to Sarah. Don't worry.
I just want to say my daughter has enjoyed the new meals that are, she said they were good. So that's it's an improvement, she
Good.
said.
Good. That's good to hear. Sarah.
Where did we come up with the pricing for the adult breakfast and lunch? I mean, I like accounting, but $2.93, and it's just. Oh, that includes the tax. Okay, that answers that. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve kitchen inventory stipend. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves payment of the kitchen inventory stipend of $500 to Lisa Snyder as per the Duanesburg Education Support Association contract, Article 24, Item C2, effective with the start of the 2022-2023 school year. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Melissa. Francis, will you second?
Sure.
Thanks. Questions or comments on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next financial item. Approve disposal of obsolete transportation vehicle. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve surplus of the following obsolete transportation vehicle and authorizes the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services to determine best interest of the district, either to trade in or auction. Details of the vehicle as listed. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Melissa. And a second? Thank you, Tony. Questions or comments on this item? Yes,
Question.
Sarah.
I just want to say thank you for the additional information that I had asked for earlier this week. And just to clarify, is the $3,000 to $5,000 cost to repair just for the fuel pump, or is that all inclusive of the other items that are listed that needed repaired?
Just for the fuel pump. The fuel pump on those buses is extremely expensive.
Okay, thank you.
It's also propane, right? Which you're trying to get away from.
It's a propane bus, yeah. And so I will add though that the new EPA guidelines when they're talking about electric buses, propane buses also are considered in that. That you can also choose to go with propane buses. So at some point we may have to talk about which direction we want to go because they also propane buses, though, they do work, but the repair costs are, but we're not sure what the.
That was likely true with the electric buses.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a future us problem.
It's coming quick, actually.
All right, any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve use of facilities agreement with Mohonasen Central School District. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the use of facilities agreement with Mohonasen Central School District for use of their swimming pool facility for the Duanesburg Girls Varsity Swim Team. This agreement is for the 2022-23 school year. The agreement should not be binding on the parties until authorized and signed by each party's respective representatives. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Avis. And a second? Tony, thanks. Questions or comments on this? Okay, all.
Actually,
oh,
I'm
go
glad
ahead.
that the girls are going to be able to swim. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
And
thank
they
you.
won their first meet already.
They did?
They did.
That's wonderful.
They beat Shaker.
Great.
And tonight they have another meet. Yeah. Yeah, and Shaker has a team twice as big, so that's pretty impressive. All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Moving on. Approve contract with Mountain Lake Academy. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the agreement for services between Mountain Lake Academy and Duanesburg Central School for the 2022-2023 school year as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Melissa. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Francis. Questions or comments on this? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve transfer of excess funds to reserve funds. Recommendation that the Duanesburg Board of Education authorize transfers from excess fund balance into the following reserve funds as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. TRS Reserve Fund, $97,876. Benefits Reserve Fund, $5,535.50. Capital Reserve Fund, Capital Reserve Fund, $1,143,460. Do I have a motion? Francis, thanks. Second? Thank you, Tony. Questions or comments on this? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Final financial item. Approve use of facilities agreement with Capital Kids Care. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the use of facilities agreement with Capital Kids Care for use of one large room and gymnasium within the elementary school for after-school childcare. This agreement is for the 2022-23 school year. The agreement shall not be binding on the parties until authorized and signed by each party's representative or respective representatives, excuse me. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
Melissa, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tony. Questions or comments?
I just wanted to thank Capital Kids Care for really stepping up and moving expeditiously so that we could offer after-school care for elementary school kids. We were really left without an option, and we started yesterday. So we couldn't be happier with the way things are working out.
Good, thank you. Sarah, I think you had something?
I did. And I understand the urgency of procuring somebody to watch the kids, but normally, would we have voted on this as a board, switching providers for the after-school care, or is that not? Okay.
You would have voted on the contract, whether it was with the YMCA or Capital Kids, but not switching providers.
Okay, I just wondered. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just wanted to agree with Jim on that. I am sure there's a ton of parents that are appreciative because there's not much out here. I remember when my kids were younger, it was difficult finding care before and after school. So I'm sure it's very much appreciated. That's it.
Thank you. Francis, do you have something?
Yeah, what's a large room?
So really, they're going to be using the cafeteria, and the little storage alcove has been cleared out, and so
Okay.
that's their home base.
So they're going to be in the cafeteria?
Mostly the
Remember?
cafeteria, yeah.
Do we still have a relationship with the Y? Is there anything they're doing for the school district right now?
Not currently, no.
Okay, okay. Anyone else? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to other. Approved Committee on Preschool Special Education and Committee on Special Education minutes. Recommendation the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the CPSE and CSE meetings and their minutes from the August 16, 23, 26, and September 8 and 9, 2022 meetings. Do I have a motion?
So motion.
Thank you, Francis. Second? Melissa, thank you. Questions or comments?
I just wanted to note, Celeste, just wanted to note that I think there are some duplicates in the attachments. Just bringing that to your attention. There aren't actually I don't think that many. Some of them are listed more than once.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to personnel. Accept resignations. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the following resignations. Joe Vale, effective September 12, 2022. Christine Finkel, effective September 9, 2022. Karen Wagner, effective September 7, 2022. And Alexandra Balmas, effective October 9, 2022. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Sarah. Second?
I'll second.
Avis, thank you. Questions or comments on this? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on. Approve termination S. Hunt. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services, the Board of Education hereby terminates the employment of Shane Hunt, laborer, effective August 26, 2022. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Melissa. A second? Thank you, Tony. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve appointments. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following appointments as recommended by the Superintendent. Assistant Superintendent of Management Services, Athletic Director, and Elementary Principal. ECA appointments are for the applicable 2022-2023 school year and sports season, beginning with preseason practice and ending at the conclusion of the season, including sectional play. All appointments are employees at will. An appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school season, term, or year. Amanda Stigberg. Okay. I will, as listed. I need a motion.
You got it.
Thank you, Francis. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Melissa. Questions or comments on this item? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Approve appointment Kay Brinsko. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Kelly Brinsko to a 4-year probationary appointment as an elementary school teacher in the elementary tenure area, Bachelor's Step 2, commencing September 1, 2022, and ending August 31, 2026, contingent upon compliance with the requirements of the education law. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Avis. Second? Tony. Thank you. Questions or comments on this item?
Just wondering where she might be teaching this year when she starts 4th grade. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Last personnel item. Approve appointment D. Kamer. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Dana Kamer to a 4-year probationary appointment as a school counselor in the school counseling and guidance tenure area, Master's Step 12, commencing September 27, 2022, and ending September 26, 2026, contingent upon compliance with the requirements of the education law. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Francis, thank you. Melissa, will you second?
Sure.
Okay, great. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Oh, I have one comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you for the fast movement on this, because I know it was a surprise. And so thank you, Mrs. Marvin, maybe Mrs. Benjamin too, and Dr. Niedermeyer for acting so quickly, and for this lovely person for accepting the job.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, an information item. The Schoharie County School Board Association Fall Dinner will be held Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. More info to follow. I know a lot of the board members usually attend that, and it's kind of a fun event, and you also learn a bunch of things too, and get to kind of collaborate, chat with some other board members, and get their perspectives on.
It's being hosted by Schoharie, and it's probably going to be down at the place that's mind skipping. Settles Hill. Thank you. I told her earlier. She knew. That's how she knew the answer.
They copied us. That's where we went.
Apparently, there's not a lot of choices.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Okay. Motion to move into executive session.
Motion.
And this is for the purpose of, to discuss personnel issues and potential real estate acquisition. Sorry. Sarah, will you motion?
Yes.
Okay, and can I have a second, please?
Sure.
Thank you, Francis. Questions or comments on that?
Just to remind folks we're not coming back.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So for those of you in the audience, we're going to go into executive session, and when we come out of executive session, we will not be doing any more regular business. So thank you very much.